ideology of resentment, a discourse that outwardly appears like moral or political critique, but which on examination is mainly just a resentful moan. The goal of resentment politics is not to improve conditions. In fact, the resentful person is full of contempt for any morally compromised sellouts who are attempting to enact plausible reforms. They don't want victory, they don't want power, they want to endlessly critique power, because for them, critique is an important psychological defense against feeling impotent. Shaler described it this way.
It is peculiar to ressentiment criticism that it does not seriously desire that its demands be fulfilled. It does not want to cure the evil. The evil is merely a pretext for the criticism.
What am I going to do with my eyes? I think a pink kind of look. We've been doing a lot of pink looks. I love that hay fever look. As a general rule, the more radical a political community claims to be, the more likely it is to be a community of resentment. Self-styled radicals will tell you, superficial surface reforms do not interest us. The problem must be critiqued at its root. And then the root turns out to be this universal, all-encompassing evil, right? Society itself, the system, the machine. A resentment ideologue always imagines himself to be engaged in a kind of satanic revolt against an omnipotent, omnipresent enemy. Okay, I just need to do makeup for a second. It's harder than it looks to be a makeup vlogger. Like, it's hard to talk while doing this. And nothing short of total revolution counts as any sort of victory whatsoever. We have to dismantle the entire system. Burn it all down. I guess it's pedestrian to point out that this is the revolutionary utopian equivalent of Christians awaiting the last judgment. Our kingdom is coming, comrades. Often the appeal of utopian ideology is similar to religion. It's not about healthcare, higher wages, relief from police violence. Those are actual goals that could be demanded, worked for, and achieved. Utopian ideology instead promises relief from some general malaise, alienation. And so ironically, it can have the same opiate effect that Marx ascribes to religion. But release from the general anguish of human existence is not a political goal. There's been many revolutions in the last few centuries, and so far, 0 utopias. Resentment, envy, and hunger, for that matter, are not satiated by the downfall of the old regime. When the people have no bread, they eat the rich. And when the rich are gone, they eat each other. And because of the proximity effect, envy may actually increase after the revolution. You may actually be more envious of a favored comrade, a successful citoyen, oui, a kulak, than you ever were of the aristocrats. So envy turns paranoid and imaginative in revolutionary moments. It gets sublimated into morality, and the accusations start flying. That citizen is conspiring against the revolution. That peasant is hoarding grain. So the guillotine starts slicing thousands of heads off, the gulags fill up, or an authoritarian strongman takes over just to announce another revolution 2 decades later. The things people will do to stay relevant, honestly. And for what? What long-term egalitarian utopia results? Socialism with Chinese characteristics?
Hey everybody. So the thing I kind of want to talk about here is my first thoughts on the brand new episode of ContraPoints, Envy. Envy is probably one of the best works by Natalie, in my opinion. I think it is a return to her roots in academia in a lot of ways. I think there's a lot more academic oomph in that video than some of the previous. I also think it kind of takes opulence, canceling, cringe, and shame and puts them in a very interesting series at that point. Justice as well. Hi, Lily. So, here are my thoughts. What I really appreciated first and foremost about ContraPoints' video is that I feel as though it did something we don't get to see that often, and that is it allowed us a picture or a glimpse into, I think, something very, very true with the online left. And that is, it explained in a very meaningful way oh, wrong one. Hold on. Doot. There you go. I think this video does a really good job of not only, I'm not sure why that's the way that is. Where's my camera? Why is Discord chat over my camera? What the hell? What the hell? So apparently Streamlabs just hates living today. So I think this video is really and truly one of Natalie's pretty greatest works. I think it does an amazing job going through and outlining, I think, in a lot of ways, there I am, outlining in a lot of ways one of the major sicknesses that affects the left. Specifically that we are, by definition, affected by envy. Being in the position of fighting for people who have less resources and less capability, we are in that position where we do envy them. We want the same thing for everyone. And the problem is that envy is not the only explanation for that. Compassion is as well, and she mentions this. Where I think this gets really important is envy can lead to a sickness of sorts, a way in which a person is functionally incapable of seeing any path forward. And we see this with the purity culture of the left, the way in which we tear down our own, the way in which we tear down people who could be potential leaders for us, the way in which you see so many Bernie or busters now betraying Bernie. Because people violate the ethos of purity, because again, it's a lot easier than speaking to the envy. Instead, you turn it, as she discussed, into contempt, into hate. And I think there's something really notable there. I also think she kind of brings up a good point about why historically envy has been something so scary. To be envied by your neighbors means to be a target. We have kind of gone away from that as a modern society, and probably for good reason, but it does lead to some really negative outcomes, as she described at the beginning of the video. And it does lead to a way in which we sort of don't pick our battles because everything falls into that line of purity. For example, she mentioned, why aren't we going after billionaires and not worrying about millionaires, right? Huge, huge difference. The idea is, and I think this is a really good point, is she says in the video, eat the rich, but once you run out of rich people, you eat each other. Envy seems to, as an idea, arises out of what seems to me like a feeling of powerlessness that leads to contempt, to hatred. And you see this on the online left. There's no unity whatsoever. People play off each other, they bounce off each other, they use each other's videos as ways to get clout, and that's not to say the friendships that people bake with some folks is decent enough, but the fact is that there is a way in which envy does play a part. And the fact is, and what makes envy so horrifying, is that in some ways I think it's the opposite of it's the beginning of outrage culture. Twitter is literally a system designed to create envy. Facebook is literally a system to create envy. How many people do I worked with where they've judged their lives worthless in comparison to people's Instagrams or Facebooks or Twitter pictures? No one ever posts the picture where they look shitty in the bathroom, no makeup, no nothing. What they post is them looking great on vacation with their family, looking really sexy up at the camera, right? And that's the problem, is that this doesn't get talked about. Envy you can't speak to, so you turn it into contempt, you turn it into outrage. Now, envy doesn't obviously explain all of the ills on the online left, but I do think it explains a lot of them. And I think I need to watch this video a few more times to really get the full message. But I'll put it this way. This is what I said on Twitter about this. Let me see if I can go through here and all my ridiculous nonsense. Great one by Bimbo Politics. ContraPoints, new video here where I point out the revolution was the rapture for secular leftists back in January. It's nice to see that concept being brought into the public eye. We'll get to that in a minute. Right? Nihilism out, hope and determination are in. Very nice, very nice. And you get into this. This is what I said on Twitter. I'll probably have a more sophisticated answer on this for stream, but I'm about 2/3 of the way through this video, and I feel like Natalie has done something that is really fucking impressive. If you take this video and you combine it with opulence, canceling, cringe, and justice, you get an incredibly clear picture of the paradoxes within queer culture due to classism, othering, and envy. Is Blair White so hateful towards non-binary people because she really is just being a pick-me, or is she so contemptuous because that's a really good way to transmute her envy at their freedom? I highly recommend watching this as soon as possible, and I will be talking about it on stream tomorrow. This video is fucking great. Right? Seriously. By the way, go follow me on fucking Twitter. Jesus. Another thing that just came to my mind is that during a lot of the canceling of Natalie, a lot of her stands threw around the term jealousy. That people were just jealous of her. I think Natalie is sort of pointing in this video that she agrees with me that that is not the case. But in fact, a better description of some of this behavior is envy. As someone who studies psychology, I'm not actually entirely sure why this didn't stand out to me as well as it does here. And I think that points out our tendency to never speak to envy. This would explain people like Rose of Dawn or Blair or the offensive Tiesler. Their hatred not only comes from their self-loathing, but most likely envy at feeling incredibly trapped in the endless cycle of compromise they put themselves in. If I can't be free, no one can. Seriously, think about that for a moment. If I can't be free, no one can. You can sum up the entire Incredibles based on envy. Syndrome has envy. If everyone's super, no one is. Kind of, in the sense that it is because they have something that you don't have. It's not just that you are jealous. Jealousy is more of a defensive reaction. The way she describes in the video is envy is actually offensive. Patricia, my take on that would be is that there probably is some predispositions, either, based on heredity or based on experiences that probably can make people more susceptible to envy. But it seems to be a human thing regardless. So I can't say inherently that it's just, some people are worse than others. It seems to be a human thing. But this is kind of the biggest thing she says there. If I can't be free, no one can. If I can't have this, no one can. Envy is not just about anger at the other person. It's about wanting to tear down what they have. And she goes into a very long discussion about Nietzsche and some of the ways he thought about this stuff. And I won't go into that today, but I guess I just want to say to people that I think this video deserves a few watches. I think, and it stands to reason, that that's way too close. There we go. That we need to try to understand as clearly as possible how this affects us. One of the things I also noted in this discussion, I think this was after the fact, additional thoughts. This is going to piss off a lot of class reductionists and tankies because it directly calls into question their methods and their negativity. Right? You can sum up Jimmy Dore's entire career based on envy. Yeah, envy, privilege, and social mobility. Interesting. Yeah, because we can't ignore that there are power differentials, and there are ways in which we need to repair those. Part of the problem is a lot of scholarly discussion about envy tends to ignore compassion. Nietzsche, for example, really just believed morality was something that was created that was sort of self-interested, right? There was the poor's or the slave's morality, right? The idea of taking down or tearing down what the rich believed, right? To be noble was not to be a good person; it was to be nobility. Later became to be noble, right? It became something else, and over time, things change. Well, and think about it like this. If you're somebody who wants to only speak on class, and all these people are taking away from your movement, or at least you think they are, and talking about gender, LGBT rights, race, etc., that's a threat, right? They might have something that might sell better. They might have something that would pull people away from your movement because your movement is lacking. This gets into a little bit of a side tangent, but one of the things I've been discussing with Zena for a long time is I'm pretty sure I'm blackpilled on the revolution. I'm serious. I'm a fucking socialist, and I'm blackpilled on the idea of revolution. I don't think it's worthwhile, and here's why. Revolutions are framed in this fantasy thing of being like the rapture, like Contra said, to be this thing where, you know, it'll be great, it'll be wonderful. We'll tear down the bourgeoisie, and we'll have a proletariat paradise. Great. What do we do the next day? It's a lot easier to tear down a system than it is to build one. And the problem is that it's usually bloody and violent. And guess who the people that are usually the victims? It's not the rich, not by percentage. It's usually the marginalized, usually the poor, the downtrodden, racial minorities, and probably, I would guess, LGBT people. I've now kind of taken in the notion that I think any call for like revolution feels, I want to say, almost like a backdoor way of being class reductionist. You want to take down the class system, but you don't want to change any of the system. You want to tear the system apart and get rid of the parts you don't like. But the problem is some of these systems aren't based on just having a ruling class. They're based on having a white supremacist mindset or a cis-normative, het-normative fucking way of thinking. You can tear down the fucking rich all you want, but that doesn't change those systems. And at least from my perspective, I think that's why I'm kind of blackpilled on this now. I genuinely think the revolution doesn't matter. I don't think it's one we can win. We're outgunned, outmanned. The way we win is through changing the system internally. Now, I know that's looked at as incrementalism and it's bad and it's all this, but I don't like the accelerationist approach. What the acceleration approach tells me is you're willing to throw down marginalized people and let them be ground in the gears of history to get your bloody utopia. Sure, you get to have your utopia, your classless, perfect proletariat revolution, while standing on the graves of everybody you had to kill or let die in order to get there. Why is that acceptable? Why are we trading up human life and suffering for human life? It's for reducing it later. I'm not necessarily against that kind of math, but you've got to prove it to me. You've got to show me why that matters. Because if you don't, I want no part of it. I want a world where people are going to be able to feed their families, that people are going to be able to have a clear and real democratic process within their country, within their communities, within their jobs. I want a world where democracy exists everywhere, and I think that's an important thing to have. I don't want a vanguard party. I don't want a singular fucking political party like China where you don't really get a say. You pretend to get a say because that's what happens, and if you go against it, the party line crushes you. I've been fairly quiet about these kind of politics, but yeah, I'm serious. If you're looking for mental health help, please stay, hang out, do your thing. But if you're here because you're hoping I'm going to be part of your vanguard, no, I'm probably going to be one of the people you're stepping on the skull of. Like, this is the biggest thing is that I really do not want a world where we have to sacrifice a mass number of the population to get to what we want. And I think this relates back to the envy idea because envy is willing to strike out and hurt the person based on what you don't have. It's not really rational. It's not really something that is like a thought that is first, second, or thirded. It's just reactivity. You want to tear down and eat the rich, cool. But what happens when there are no more rich? Who do you blame on the societal ills? Yeah, Ash, from a certain perspective, envy is distorted thinking. So I really do think that in some ways we need to watch this video a few more times, because I think there's something really great here. And I think Natalie did a really good job of tying together this historical look at envy, the evil eye, and the way in which we thought about this in the past, and kind of what we deal with now. And I think it brings up a really good question. What sacrifices are we willing to make? Right? Like, what are we willing to do, and how do we get there with minimal human suffering and casualties? Yeah, exactly. Right? The simple fact is we have to do this the right way. And I guess my overall concern here is I don't want to do it unless I know that we win. Oh, holy shit. Amelia, thank you so much. $10 through Super Chat. Fuck yeah. Finally got to see a googly-eyed Godzilla. Hell yeah. Thank you so much for the $10. We deeply appreciate that. We always need cupcake money around here. I think Zena's going to make a giant cookie. So I'll probably have more thoughts on this when we come back to it, but I generally think we need to talk about this. And I think it's something that needs to be looked at, because what are we willing to sacrifice for these goals? And how do we get there in a way that doesn't sacrifice everybody to do it? You know? I think envy is a sickness of human beings. It's a part of us. Disability throws an interesting wrench, because any human become disabled at any point. Yeah, it's immediately an immediate class reduction. It actually defies a lot of the other systems. Though I would say being trans is similar. Being closeted trans versus being out is a radically different switch as well. Though I couldn't say it's exactly the same as disability. I would say there's at least something analogous there. Money helps out with mobility, and medical needs becomes tangible concerns because you shift to not die. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Well, and again, everything kind of does connect to class, right? A rich person who is of a minority is somebody who probably is going to have a better time in, say, the criminal justice system than, say, someone who's poor and a minority. So we can't ignore that class is a thing. But yeah, no, we need to reject authoritarianism in every way it comes up, whether it's happening in a large scale, whether it's happening in a revolutionary sort. I would even say at an individual sort. I really reject any kind of authoritarian behavior. I would argue that to some degree, the radical appeals to authority that Chris said in their video. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. It's XHRIS is their name. And that shit is awesome, because they pointed out another pattern in the RGR stuff that I didn't remember. That was, there's a lot of appealing to authority. There's not a lot of good arguments. Just appeals to authority and then reducing to those appeals of authority. And the problem is that when people don't listen to your authorities, or they want more than that, they want more something more sufficient, you lash out. Right? Like, it's a lot. Captain Bly said, this parroted from a good YouTuber, but people wanting a revolution are willing to die for a cause when they should be willing to live for a cause. Fucking true, Captain. Fucking true. Right? Like, again, like, when they say this, it always feels LARPy, because it always seems like the fucking operative from the movie Serenity. Right? Yeah, so you can live in your perfect world. Oh, I'm not going to live there. I'm a monster. Like, is it really a perfect world of people behaving themselves and doing things? Because how is it okay if it's built on the back of, like, a genocide? True. Can't watch that movie. People losing their teeth fucks with me. I'm just saying. So, I guess what I'm just saying here is I just want everyone to check out that video a couple more times. I know it's long as shit. Natalie can't seem to do a below-hour video anymore, which is fine. I got the time. But I do think it really needs to be clearly looked at. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also ring the bell if you want to be notified of our videos. If you want to help the channel, you can donate at streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip. You also can become a patron at patreon.com/transgirltherapist. As low as $3, you can support our channel. Thanks for watching.